Hey pups, Arby here, and welcome back to another fanfiction reading. And we are continuing with the Trio of Danger for our Recruitment adventure fanfiction. And in this chapter, we are about to meet Hyssop and Oregano. Much like with the other members of the Ninth Universe team, these two have very little screen time for the most part in the anime. And they are seen rather briefly in the show, but they at least deserve a spot in this story and in this fanfiction as a whole to see how they were joined in on the Ninth Universe team. And also a heads up, I know I normally do some speed drawings or speed paints over the fanfiction readings, but I cannot draw Oregano or Hyssop at all, so you won't see fan art of those two. I apologize for that. You'll just see like a screenshot or something of the characters. But regardless, I hope you guys enjoy this fanfiction, and also this is the third chapter, so if you guys already read the story as I keep linking it in the description whenever I read this fanfiction, we are halfway there. Woot woot! But regardless, hope you guys enjoyed this story, so sit back, relax, and enjoy chapter number 3 of the Trio of Danger for our recruitment adventure. Puzzle time, solve Oregano's riddles. This is gonna be interesting. Anyway, enough rambling, let's get right into it.
We're going on a warrior hunt, we're going on a warrior hunt, we're going on a warrior hunt, tra-la-la-la-la.
The Trio of Danger had opted to walk to the cave instead of running or flying, in the interest of conserving their energy in case they need to travel longer distances later on. A minute later, Lavender was already regretting that decision. The walk over to Oregano's cave had been absolutely torturous for him, as Sorrel decided to spend it skipping about and gaily singing a song she thought up on a whim. If we make it through this tournament without being erased, I'm going to come back here and flay every single one of her sheep, Lavender thought. Alive. Unfortunately, that would have to wait. Lavender restrained himself from taking any sort of action against their new recruit, lest he incite the wrath of Bergamo, or worse, Cedra or Mojito, or heaven forbid, Zeno. Fortunately, he wouldn't have to put up with the singing for too long. After a few minutes passed, the 4 warriors arrived at the base of the mountain and saw a deep, dark crevice, just like the one Sorrel described.
Here we are!
Chirped Sorrel.
Hold on, let me see if Oregano's home.
She stepped forward, poked her head into the cave, and cupped her hands over her mouth.
Oregano!
She called. Who's there? Called a gravelly voice from inside the cave. Who dares disturb the great Oregano? Bergamo's expression soured. Apparently, they were dealing with an old hermit with an inflated sense of self-importance. His recruitment, like Sorrel's, would be a bit of an uphill battle.
My name is Sorrel, she called. I come from the Kume village.
A command, you say? State your business.
Well, today I was just tending to my flock when these 3 big wolves showed up. And they said they need warriors to join them for a tournament or something, so I said yes. But they said they needed more, so I told them about you and brought them here.
A tense silence followed, as the Trio of Danger waited, with bated breath to hear how the hermit would respond to that clumsy, stumbling run-on sentence. I must say, I'm intrigued, said Oregano. It's been quite a while since I've experienced the thrill of combat. Hyssop. Yes, Oregano? Responded a deeper, more resonant voice from inside the cave. Please escort these strangers in. Seconds later, the 4 warriors heard the sound of large, heavy feet pounding the ground of the cave. The footsteps grew louder and louder, until they finally saw a tall, hulking figure emerge from the veil of the darkness. The creature was large and muscular enough to dwarf even Bergamo, and had a body that appeared to be carved out of some mauve-colored wood, a notion reinforced by his tree-stump-shaped head. Torpedo-like spikes jutted out from his beefy, hunched back, and he wore naught but a pair of brown pants that seemed barely big enough to cover his thighs. I assume you're Hyssop? Asked Basil. You assumed correctly, said Hyssop. Come with me. Hyssop turned his back and started lumbering back into the cave. As the heroes followed Hyssop inside, Bergamo couldn't help but wonder why Sorrel hadn't suggested recruiting him. He'd certainly consider extending an invitation to the behemoth, but that would come later. For the time being, the four warriors walked alongside Hyssop in silence, accompanied by the sound of his thundering footsteps and the fainter sound of their feet scraping against the floor of the cave. At the end of the tunnel, they could see what was illuminated by 3 torches. As they got closer, they saw the features of a long figure sitting cross-legged under the torch's light. The figure was a bony-faced humanoid with sunken eyes, burgundy skin, thick, wavy ashen-colored hair, and a lean, skewy physique. Welcome to my cave, the gentleman said. I am Oregano. I see you already met my assistant Hyssop. We have, said Bergamo. I am Bergamo, and these are my brothers Lavender and Basil.
And I'm Sorrel,
chirped Sorrel, giving him a wave. You said that already, said Hyssop.
Oh, I know. I just like saying my name. Sorrel, Sorrel, Sorrel. It really rolls off the tongue.
Bergamo groaned. Below the comment slide. Anyway, as she told you, we're participating in a multi-universe tournament of power, and we've come to your planet in search for warriors to join our team. Would you give us the pleasure of joining us? Certainly, said Oregano. Well, that was easy. If you can answer one of my riddles. Never mind. Bergamo let out a soft sigh, trying to repress his annoyance out of tact. Riddles, you say? Yes. Anyone who enters my cave must solve at least one of my mind-bending riddles. It's tradition. Bergamo, noticing that Lavender was looking increasingly irate, grabbed him by the hunch and ringed him in. I say we agree, said Bergamo. Surely we can solve at least one. I'll take the first one, proclaimed Basil, stepping forward. Give us your best riddles. Oregano's wrinkled lips curled up into a sly smile. Riddle number 1. What can you catch but not throw? Basil snorted, almost offended that Oregano would give him something so easy. A cold. Wrong! Exclaimed Oregano, causing Basil's eyes to flip open in surprise. It's a very, very sticky ball of honey and maple sap. Basil gave the old hermit a befuddled look. A ball of honey? Yes! You can catch it, but you cannot throw it, because it will stick to your hand. Sorrel bore a cheeky grin that shone through the darkness of the cave.
Oregano's riddles are tricky,
she said.
Don't assume you've heard them before.
But wasn't my answer just as good? Asked Basil, tilting his head. Oregano shook his head. As the wise elder Coradonna said, every riddle must have one answer, but if they had more, they would cease to be riddles. Basil wasn't sure if that was true, but he wasn't going to waste time by arguing schematics. Very well. Give us another one. Sure, said Oregano, turning towards Lavender. This one's for the hunchback. Your mother gives birth to a child, but it is neither your brother nor sister. Who is it? That's easy, Lavender said with a sneer. It's me. Wrong, Oregano cried, with near maniacal glee. They are your non-binary, non-gender conforming sibling. Lavender snarled and glared daggers at the old man. Are you serious? He demanded. Of course I am. Don't you know that gender is on a spectrum? This prompted a giggle from Sorrel.
Oregano, you're so funny.
Bergamo, fearing the worst, cast a cautious gaze in Lavender's direction, and was surprised to find the middle child's rage was starting to dissipate. You're right, actually, he said, backing away. Gender is on a spectrum. Bergamo decided to let the matter pass without comment, and stepped forward. Very wise, Oregano, he said. I'll take the next riddle if you don't mind. But of course, said Oregano. I am tall when I'm young, but short when I'm old. What am I? A can't, Bergamo began, only to clamp his mouth shut before he finished the answer. His first instinct was to say a candle, but it occurred to him that Oregano's riddles weren't quite that intrusive. A can of what? Oregano asked with a chuckle. A can of corn, a can of ramen, a can of nothing, interrupted Bergamo. Just disregard that last word. I misspoke. Bergamo took a step backwards, in order to give him some space to think. He hummed, pressing a knuckle up against his temple. He mulled over the correct answers to the previous 2 riddles, and tried to come up with a third one that would fit the pattern. The problem was that, as far as he could tell, there wasn't any discernible pattern. While he was still lost in thought, Basil suddenly leaped forward and planted himself a foot away from the hermit, staring him down with his arms folded across his chest. "It's a giraffe who ingested a very, very slow-acting shrinking potion," he declared. "Final answer." Bergamo's first instinct was to storm over and give the youngest a walloping for butting in with such a ridiculous answer, without consulting him or Lavender no less. But one glance over Basil's shoulder revealed that the wrinkled grin was spreading across Oregano's face. "Correct!" he cheered, giving Basil a round of applause. "Well, actually, it was an elephant, but close enough." Sora let out a whoop of glee, skipped over to Basil, and gave him a congratulatory hug around the neck.
You figured him out!
She wailed, patting Basil on the head.
Who's a good boy? Who's a clever little wolf?
Bergamo decided to let the two have their moment, and stepped past them to address his prospective new teammates. "I trust this means you'll be joining our team?" "I shall," said Oregano, pushing himself up onto his feet. Bergamo extended a paw towards him, offering to help him up, but Oregano refused. "I appreciate the help, but I assure you, I am no feeble old man." "I would hope not," said Bergamo, turning his head in Hyssop's direction. "And what about you, Hyssop? Will you be joining us as well?" Hyssop stared down at Bergamo for a moment, letting the gears turn in his proportionally small head before producing a tear's blunt answer. "I see no reason not to." Bergamo couldn't help but smile, knowing that he not only recruited a powerhouse, but also brought himself an additional step closer to filling out the roster. Meanwhile, his brothers had decided to show their satisfaction in a decidedly less steep manner. "2 for 1! Hollered Basil, leaping in the air and clicking his heels together. Upon landing, he and Lavender locked arms and performed a celebratory do-si-do, all while chanting 2 for 1, 2 for 1. Bergamo just stood back and chortled, shaking his head at the ridiculous display. "I must thank you, Sorrel," he said, as he turned toward the young rabbit, who looked just as amused as he did. "Thanks to you, we're far ahead of schedule."
"I was nothing,"
said Sorrel, waving him off, after letting his brothers rejoice for a moment or two. Bergamo started walking back down to the cave, motioning the rest to follow him. "Come, my brothers, we mustn't waste a single second more." As he walked back the way he came, with his ever-growing crew behind him, Bergamo idly wondered whether he should test out Oregano and Hyssop's combat compatibilities before letting them on the team. Ultimately, he decided against it, as he didn't exactly have time to spar, nor was he in any position to be selective when it came to choosing team members. "By the way," he asked, looking back over his shoulder towards Oregano and Hyssop, "do either one of you know anyone else who might be willing to join us?" "As a matter of fact, I do," said Oregano, donning a mischievous smirk. "But if you want to know, you're going to have to answer another His name is Comfrey, and he lives in the Parcella Swamp," interrupted Hyssop. Oregano reached up and gave Hyssop a smack over the head, which didn't seem to affect him at all. "What was that for? I was going to give him a real stumper." Hyssop just shrugged his meaty shoulders, not even bothering to turn his head. Oregano gave a defeated sigh before turning back to Bergamo. "Yes, his name is Comfrey, and he dwells in the Parcella Swamp, but his influence extends far, far beyond that. I'll explain on the way over." "Don't bother," Bergamo said, giving him a dismissive gesture. "We'll have plenty of time to get to know each other after the tournament. If we win, that is," he thought, shuddering at the reminder that his very extensive was banking on that if. "Now, where can we find this Parcella Swamp?" he asked, in an attempt to get his mind off the subject. "About 30 kilometers beyond the mountain." "About 30 kilometers beyond the mountain, along the Jinji River," said Hyssop. "Oregano can lead you there." Bergamo raised an eyebrow at the giant. "Why can't you?" "I can't fly." Oregano draped a hand across Hyssop's shoulder. As powerful as he is, Hyssop is quite the clumsy one. Bukajitsu is beyond him. "Have you tried teaching him?" asked Basil. In response, Oregano threw back his head and cackled. "Oh, you should have seen it! The planet quaked every time he tried to take off. But no, we gave up after that. As the wise elder Coradonna said, you cannot teach a cow to breathe underwater." It was at this point that the group was nearing the end of the tunnel and emerging back into the outside world. "But don't be concerned," said Oregano. "We devised other ways of Hyssop to get around. Alrighty, we are ending on that little cliffhanger right there, y'all. And like I said earlier, there are 6 chapters in this story, and we are halfway there. Whoop, whoop. I'm not sure when chapter 4 is gonna be done, like as a reading thing, or when I'm gonna get to reading chapter 4. Now, I'm not sure when I'm gonna get to reading chapter 4. Hopefully soon, hopefully in the near future. But regardless, I hope you all are very, very, very excited for this next chapter. And again, we are ending on a cliffhanger. But all that aside, really hope you guys enjoyed this story. And I do apologize that there is no actual speed drawing footage of Hyssop or Oregano at all. But this is a very, very fun chapter to read. I had a lot of fun reading it. And again, we got some more sorrel eggs basil shipping, and it is freaking adorable. I love it. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of giggled at the part where Lavender and Basil were doing like the do-si-do enchanting 2 for 1 type of thing. And I imagine that happening in my head. And it's freaking adorable, and it's very funny, and I love it. I would love to see that. If you guys are fan artists out there, or are Dragon Ball fan artists, or Trio of Danger fan artists, or just a fan artist in general, and if you like Dragon Ball, Trio of Danger, whatever, if you guys could do something like that, or if you guys could draw Lavender and Basil doing like a do-si-do type of thing, I would love to see that. But all that being said, if you guys want to read ahead, as always, I will link the fanfiction in the description box below. All credit goes to the original author, so be sure to give them some love and support for their stories, their fanfictions, or what have you. And that's pretty much it. And with all that being said, I'll see you on the next one. Cue the outro. RP is out. Peace.